Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, clinical psychologist, parenting educator, and post-traumatic parent. Welcome to the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast, where we learn to provide our children with a healthy childhood, even if ours was anything but. Or maybe we had a wonderful childhood, but recent events in our lives have left us reeling. Let's face it, after 2020, we're all post-traumatic parents now. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a really exciting episode of Season 3 of the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast. Today, I have Dr. Ross Greene, who is a clinical psychologist. He is the originator of the innovative evidence-based approach called Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, CPS, which is described in a book that had a lot of influence on me, The Explosive Child, Lost at School, Lost and Found, and a book that, you know, when I tell people about it, they seem not to know about it, but it's such an amazing gem, raising human beings. He's also the author of the soon-to-be-released The Kids Who Aren't Okay, The Urgent Case for Reimagining Support, Belonging, and Hope in Schools. He also developed and executive produced the award-winning documentary film, The Kids We Lose, which was released in 2018. Dr. Greene was on the faculty at Harvard Medical School for over 20 years and is now founding director of the nonprofit Lives in the Balance. Dr. Greene has worked with several thousand kids with concerning and challenging behaviors and their caregivers, and he and his colleagues have overseen implementation and evaluation of the CPS models in schools and inpatient psychiatry units and residential treatment centers. What I really appreciate about Dr. Greene's approach is it's a very easy way for a parent to sort of get the kind of training we have in psychology and in how we talk to kids and adults. In therapy, we do a lot of collaborative problem solving, and it's a way for a parent to sort of download that program and say, oh, so this is how you do it. So I really appreciate having you on the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm very glad to be here.
So I think the first question last night, what we did was in the post-traumatic parenting community, I hosted a live and I asked people questions and they sort of, had their questions. But I think the first question I have before we get into all of their questions is, what made you decide to develop CPS? Like you were a clinical psychologist probably in the age of behavioral, sticker charts, rewards, punishments, consequences, tough love, all that stuff. What made you say, wait, there's got to be another way to do this?
Well, the first thing I would say is that those things are still too popular. But what got me changing the way I was doing things was seeing that the way I was doing things wasn't working very well for a lot of kids and a lot of families. I take my membership in one of the helping professions seriously. And helpers are supposed to help. Helpers are not supposed to make things worse. And tell enough parents that if their kid is non-compliant, they should hold them in timeout or lock them in their bedroom. You can only do that so much and see them trudge into your office the next week. And the parents, of course, had glazed eyes and they were saying, this is going to work, right? But the kids in particular, right? Holding your kid in timeout isn't fun. If it better be worth it. And to tell you the truth, it's not worth it. It's not even recommended as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But it was the kids who struck me the most because these are kids who I had established a good relationship with, taught their parents positive attending in the beginning, paying attention to everything the kid was doing. And then it was the week that I taught the parents how to use timeout. It was the very next week that the kid would come into my office looking almost betrayed. Because let's face it, holding a kid in timeout is an act of power. Locking them in their bedroom is an act of power. That'll get you moving
them
in another
definitely
direction.
Is, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's when things started to change. I started paying a much closer attention to the research. One of the most important things was that I noticed that these parents of these ill-behaved kids, who I had been trained to believe were passive, permissive, inconsistent, non-contingent, inept disciplinarians, had other children in their home who were well-behaved.
Yeah.
That got me looking a lot closer at the literature on these kids. And that's where I stumbled across, wait a minute, these are frustration responses that these kids are exhibiting. These are skills these kids are struggling with that are causing those big frustration responses. How is timeout or a sticker chart going to address any of what's really going on with this kid?
Yeah. It's so interesting because what you did is literally what you tell parents to do. You're like, it's not working. We're going to try something else. And because so many parents are like, I have to double down on these strategies. And you're like, wait, but if it's not working, that's data. And if it's not working, that means that it's not going to work. So then we have to try a different solution, which I think a lot of people have a hard time doing. It's very hard to rethink or to try something else.
Well, it's important for them to have something else. And back then I wasn't seeing a whole lot of something else. And so I felt like I needed to create that something else. And now that something else, collaborative and proactive solutions, is evidence-based. So that something else has turned into something quite useful for a lot of parents and educators.
Right. So you've really demonstrated its effectiveness, which of course is how we do things. I know in the age of TikTok, apparently how we do things is somebody comes up with a cool theory and posts it. And if lots of people watch it, then it must be true. But what we actually are supposed to do is test things, see if they work. And then if they work, then we publish some research and we say, let's try this. But,
Right.
It's a little not so fashionable. It's easier to say that your trauma is stored in your hips or whatever. I once saw a meme online, which was every single thing in parenting forums, every single thing that your kid is doing is a symptom of autism, except actual autism, which is a symptom of a milk allergy. So yeah. But it's very true that, I actually call it, the analogy I use is parenting Peter Rabbit. I have a couple of kids and I had one Peter Rabbit. We assume our parenting is going to be for in the Beatrix Potter stories, the Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail rabbits, right? The good little rabbits. Mm-hmm. And of course, this was in the day when we labeled kids that way, but the good little rabbits who sew on their samplers and drink their elderberry tea and do what Mama Rabbit says. But then you have Peter, who's literally running into Mr. McGregor's garden, the guy who shot his dad. And Mama Rabbit is understandably rather worried about this behavior. It's just, we assume we're going to be parenting Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, and then we get Peter every so often. And that in and of itself can be traumatic for a parent. It's really scary.
It's scary when what you know isn't serving you well in any field. But that's why in The Kids Who Aren't Okay, I'm defining good parenting and good teaching as meeting every kid where they're at. Okay. And being responsive to the hand you've been dealt. There's absolutely no reason to think that the same thing's going to work for every kid. Right. So let's not pretend that every kid is exactly the same. One of the terms that I highlight in The Kids Who Aren't Okay is developmental variability, which is a fancy way of saying every kid is different. If every kid is different, why on earth would we try to treat every kid exactly the same? And why would we expect that to work?
Right. And probably the coming to terms with, this kid's got a more challenging temperament. This kid's got a harder time meeting expectations. This kid is not like their siblings or their classmates. Probably a certain amount of, grief and coming to terms and emotional struggle that goes into it.
Most of the training most parents get for being parents is their own childhood.
Yes.
And so they either think that they were really well parented and want to do it exactly the same, or they think that they were really poorly parented and they want to do it exactly differently. But as I say to many parents who say to me, yeah, but all those punishments worked for me, apparently it's not working for your kid because this is a disaster. So let's start doing what is going to work.
That's so interesting because, in post-traumatic parenting, we often talk about this idea that the internal working model, when we say that about attachment, we mean that your brain just wants to copy paste what your parents did. And for the people who had experienced good parenting, it's easier because you could do what your parent did. for people who are like, whatever I do, it has to be not what my mom did or not what my stepdad did, or, those things, it's harder because you have to your brain has to work so much harder. Brains like to copy paste things. It's easy to copy paste things. And what you were pointing out is even when you actually experienced good parenting, which a lot of members of the post-traumatic parenting community have not experienced, you still have a disadvantage because you want to do what mom did, and what mom did worked well for you with your temperament and, you and your siblings, and it's not going to work for the kid, like you said, the hand you were dealt. So that is so interesting because I think a lot of members of the post-traumatic parenting community go into that counterfactual. We think like, if only I'd experienced good parenting, if only it would be easier. And what you're saying is not necessarily, might actually hold you back further.
Well, I'm glad they experienced good parenting, but that doesn't mean that the exact same kind of parenting is going to serve you well with a particular kid.
Yeah, that's also like, sometimes you're just in uncharted territory, like your parents raised you in a different country, or, I know in my experience, I was raised by a wonderful mother, but a very critically ill dad. And my mother had to spend a lot of my childhood trying to keep my father alive, which was the right priority. He ultimately did die when I was a teenager. So, when I am not raising children in a home impacted by serious chronic illness, right? Mm-hmm. So I can't copy paste. I'm also not raising an only daughter. I had 3 older brothers, but they were out of the house by the time I was growing up. So I'm not raising an only daughter. I'm raising a couple of siblings. And like siblings, this is probably groundbreaking, but siblings sometimes fight with each other and do not get along, and they don't just, go to their bedrooms and read books, right? So that's sometimes difficult. So this is such an important thing, I think, for the post-traumatic parenting community to know, that maybe we stop dwelling on the if only I had experienced good parenting, because it's about meeting your kid where they're at, and not every kid is at the same place.
I think that's right. Although I can understand the desire in adults who do not feel that they experienced good parenting to wonder about what they missed. Yeah. It's just that all of it doesn't translate into how you're going to work with your own kid. But I'll take good parenting over not so good parenting any day.
Yeah. And when you experience the not so good parenting, like in my book, what we actually talk about is this idea that in parenting your real world child, you actually can heal your inner child. And I'm using that very metaphorically, but this idea that sometimes as you're doing something with your kid and you start feeling disproportionately upset, or you start feeling sometimes jealous of your own kid, like your kid, is experiencing something that you never got. You can actually heal that. You can be like, yeah, I'm giving my kid a lot of focused attention right now that I never got, but I can experience the sense of focused attention from the experience of the adult. And that heals me too. And that's very helpful, because a lot of us don't have, a great working model of attachment, but that doesn't mean we can't give good attachment to our kids. These are skills, and we can learn how to do them.
That's right. And if you asked me what in among the reasons people feel that collaborative and proactive solutions is trauma informed, is because it involves no power.
Yeah.
It involves collaboration, and often it's when power is being imposed on you.
Yeah.
Whether by a parent or anybody else, that there's the potential of harm.
Yeah.
If that power is being applied chronically, if your voice is never heard, if no one ever asks you what's making it hard for you to accomplish something, if nobody involves you in coming up with a solution, then you know that of all the people who know the downside of power, it's people with trauma histories, because that's one of the main ingredients that they have suffered through. Yeah. And that, I find, is what they resonate with about the CPS model. This isn't about power. Here's what's interesting. There are folks out there who feel that they have been well parented, but power was a big part of the equation anyways. It's just that they were able to handle it.
Right.
Their voice wasn't heard. They weren't involved in solutions. There was strong arming involved. I just think that kind of parenting greatly increases the likelihood of adverse outcomes. Doesn't guarantee it, but it increases the likelihood of it. Yeah. There's not an ounce of power in the CPS model. It's all about collaborating and making sure that people's voices are heard.
Yeah, and I feel like for a lot of post-traumatic parents who never were talked to this way, it's really giving them a model, right? Because this is a model of how we talk to people in therapy, where you're really giving them a model for, you're also giving them something else that I think a lot of post-traumatic parents don't have a way of putting order to the chaos of their kid's behavior. So like when you say, well, if this problem keeps on happening, my kid keeps not meeting the same expectation, then it's time to have a conversation with them about like, I keep giving you this expectation, you keep not meeting it. What's going on here? What's really happening here? Can we have a conversation about it? You're already giving the parent the ability to say, oh, patterns are meaningful. Data is meaningful. The data is not, my kid is selfish and lazy. The data is, my kid keeps not feeding the dog, right? Like that's a pattern. What's up? Why are you not feeding the dog? Can we figure this out? I had this, it's interesting because I was talking about this in one of the post-traumatic parenting classes where how this approach saved me. I happen to be a very task-focused person. I like to get things done. My 11-year-old son was coming home from school and I would be like, let's do your homework. And he would disappear on me. And after like a week of this frustration, I said to him, hey, what's going on? Like, I call you to come do homework and you disappear on me. And like, why are we going through this every single day, the same thing? And he looks at me and he says, Ma, you don't get it. I said, okay, what don't I get? He says, basketball. I said, what about basketball? So he said, I come home from school and it's only going to be the sun's only going to be out for another half hour. And I really want to shoot hoops. It's not as much fun. And he's like, you're a girl, you don't get it. I'm like, just talk. Tell me what's going on. It's not fun to shoot hoops under the floodlights. It's only fun to shoot hoops with regular sunshine. I only have a half hour to shoot hoops. I want to come home. I've been learning all day. I want to come home and I want to shoot hoops till the sun goes down. I said, oh, and then you're willing to do your homework? Because I thought the problem was with the homework. He said, yeah, then I can do my homework. I just need to shoot hoops till the sun goes down. So they said, okay, and I have a little bit of a concern. How do I find you when the sun goes down? Because the sun's going to go down. I'll be bathing your younger brother. Like other stuff is going on. So then we troubleshot that. And then everything was fine, right? Like he was so right. He was feeling so misunderstood. He's 100% right. He's been sitting in school all day. He wants to shoot hoops. Now we have an indoor basketball hoop. I have a big exercise room in my basement. Like if it was just about movement, that's one thing. He wants to shoot hoops outside on the court. He's right. I don't play basketball. I'm barely 5 feet tall. I have no interest. I have a black belt. I have a different sport that I like to play. It's actually quite a different sport, but it doesn't involve being outside in the sun. So, but I get it, right? Like you're making such a good point. I think that for a lot of parents, not knowing how to talk to a kid, talk a kid through that, you're just going to see this like lazy kid who doesn't want to do his homework. And that wasn't the problem at all.
Right. What you're describing is why I often say that the number one complaint I hear from kids is that their parents don't listen. And the number one complaint I get from parents is that their kid won't talk to them.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of this has to do with our society's tendency to focus more on behavior and concerning behavior in particular than on the problems that are causing that concerning behavior.
Right.
The unsolved problem, as we call it in the CPS model that you're describing, is difficulty sitting down to do your homework immediately upon arriving home from school.
Right.
But that's an unsolved problem. You're not speaking about the behavior that's being caused by it.
Right.
Behavior is easier to interpret in any variety of ways: lazy, manipulative, attention-seeking, unmotivated, limit testing. But when we are focused on unsolved problems with kids, the expectations they're having difficulty meeting, that leads us in a completely different direction. It is much more likely to lend itself to dialogue and hearing each other. And the best part of all is it can be done proactively, because this wasn't the first time your son had disappeared when you thought he was going to be doing his homework, which means that it was a very predictable unsolved problem, which means that it could be identified proactively, which means that it can be solved proactively. Okay. And one of the things I hear from people about the CPS model is that it's really helpful to them for getting them out of the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Heat of the moment, not being in the heat of the moment is critical for everybody. Not being in the heat of the moment is particularly critical, in my experience, in people who have trauma histories because the heat and the rush of the heat of the moment, those are ingredients that make it much more difficult for all of us human beings to think clearly and solve problems together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also when we focus on behavior, we right away come up with like characterological, deficits.
Yes.
Like he's not doing his homework must mean that he's lazy and unmotivated, right? He's trying to avoid his homework. He wasn't
Correct.
trying to avoid his homework at all. He had a very legitimate problem that needed to be solved. Like he absolutely, right? It wasn't about the homework at all. It had nothing to do with the homework. Also for me, I think again with post-traumatic parenting, I very much did not want to contribute to my parents' stress. As a kid, my job, because if my father got too angry or too upset, he would clutch his heart. So my job was to keep everything calm. So if my mom would say, go do your homework, I had this operating principle of like, you don't make the situation stressful. Not because my mom was wielding power or difficult or even ever said that to me, but it was like an instinct that a traumatized child has. Like, I am not going to be loud. Right? I'm not going to in any way impose myself on the system. I'm going to keep myself very small and I'm going to do something that, if anything, adds calmness to the situation. Look, Mom, I finished my homework, right? So looking at my son as feeling free to express a need of his is like almost foreign to me, right? Like, wait, like you're going to stress your mom out? Like there's a part of my psyche that's just like, I don't get this. Mm-hmm. But that's actually me breaking a cycle, right? That my kid is able to say, I'd actually rather do my homework first. Even if you're going to be a little bit more stressed out, because as a task-oriented person, I would like to scratch that off the list and move on. But I'm the grown-up. So I'm going to, like you said in your book, I'm going to put my needs on hold temporarily for the sake of the little human I'm raising, right? That's my job. I consented to that when I became a parent, right? I can manage a drop more stress and not being as task-focused, right? And allowing him his break and his shooting hoops with the sun shining. And then, he actually, does most of his homework with minimal fuss and he feels heard and understood. I feel heard and understood, right? And we move on. It's always more problems, right? But like we move on.
What you're describing is why I tell people about your own childhood is why I tell is when people ask me, is the explosive child relevant to the implosive child? I tell them, yeah, that's the reason I'm sorry that it ended up being called the explosive child, because it is just as relevant to kids who respond to problems and frustrations by trying to get small, trying to disappear, internalize it. I would apply the model to any kid, quite frankly, because in the book, one of the points that I make is if we were to arrange the world so that it was good for the kids who aren't doing well, the kids who are doing well would do a lot better. But the reverse is not true.
Okay.
And the world is arranged for the kids who are doing well to do well, which is why we're leaving a lot of kids behind and why a lot of kids are suffering these days.
Yeah. And I think it's grown-ups too, right? Like I tend to use CPS all the time when I'm doing, because I consult in schools, so I'm doing a lot of like the problematic parent, right? That the school is looking at as the problematic parent, the angry parent, the parent that they can't get on board. When we're having these kinds of conversations, right, where it's like you come in and the parent's like, if the school was a better school, my kid wouldn't be a problem, they're angry. And it's like, all right, so it sounds like, right, and we just sort of go through, or we go through so it's not about getting your kid reading help that you object to. It's the practicality of getting them to the tutor's house. So that's an unsolved problem. Let's figure that one out, right? People aren't used to being talked to that way. But this is how therapists talk to people all the time. Like,
it is how therapists talk to people, but I was trained to talk to people that way before I became a therapist.
Okay.
When I was a psychology undergrad at the University of Florida, we had to do a placement in the field, and I picked a crisis center where I was fielding calls from people who were in great distress, and they only taught me one skill for helping them, and it was reflective listening, simply saying back to them whatever they just said to me. Well, that's me as a psychology undergrad. Reflective listening is a very is an incredible strategy for
Yeah.
helping people feel heard, helping them clarify their concerns, helping them feel understood, helping them feel like their concerns are legit. And that is a strategy I learned at the age of 19 years old.
Wow.
So I don't want, I think that what us clinicians do is kind of special, but I don't think it is beyond the reach
Right.
of most people.
Right.
What we're really talking about here is listening.
Yeah. And that's what you're teaching parents to do. It's like giving them a graduate degree in psychology in this one very important skill that they need for parenting. The one question that came in from the post-traumatic parenting community that was interesting is, what do you do with a kid with real language impairment who does maybe know the problem, but they can't articulate it because they don't
Yeah.
have the words?
We have tons of strategies for kids who are non-speaking or kids who know what they say but aren't sure how to say it, or kids who aren't sure what they want to say if they could say it. The among those many strategies, and this is people do this all the time, so it's not like it's ingenious, is I teach the kid 5 fingers. 5 means very true, 4 means pretty true, 3 means sort of true, 2 means not very true, 1 means not true at all. And then what I do is guess. And all the kids got to do is hold up fingers to let me
Oh,
know
wow.
how true my guess is. And boy, do I get a lot of information from kids just through 5 fingers. But this is more an issue of creativity for us adults. I've sat with kids across from me in a school or in my office for 3 feet away, and we texted for 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Not a word was uttered, right? We can do these things through pictures. There's all kinds of ways. Non-speaking kids, I always say that there's never been a better time in human evolution to be communicating with non-speaking kids because of all the assistive technologies that have come down the pike in the last 10 or 20 years. So the other thing I always say is don't sell those non-speaking kids short. They can participate in the process of solving the problems that are affecting their lives with some creativity and sometimes with a little bit of expertise from a good speech and language pathologist. But that's how we do it.
I love that. I love that idea of the 5 fingers. It does mean you're going to have to try to read their mind a little bit more because you're having to furnish guesses.
Correct.
Because when I told this story about my son, one of the participants said, my son has major language impairments. He has a social pragmatics disorder. He's in speech language therapy. He would never be able to articulate it the way your son did. And you're right. My son is a neurotypical kid who has a lot of advantages, but that's true. So then it would be, and you know what would actually be helpful in a situation like this, if you're not good at reading someone's mind, ChatGPT could actually be very helpful, where you could say, what could all the possible reasons be that the kid is doing this? And then you could do 5 fingers with those reasons. If your brain is blanking out, like you're right, there's technology now. Like there's probably ways that a parent could say, okay, coming with the assumption my kid is not trying to intentionally stress me out. What's going on here? And then, yeah, I really like that. I could see how that would really, really work. Another question that came in was, do you really believe there's never a use of sticker charts? Like, can you use sticker charts in a non-coercive fashion, like if you're trying to build a habit or, things like that?
I have no use for stickers. I'll take stickers over physical punishment any day of the week. The problem with stickers is that if a kid is having difficulty meeting an expectation, a sticker, you're asking a lot of a sticker
Yeah.
to help you figure out what's making it hard for them to meet that expectation and to come up with a solution that's going to address what's getting in their way. Stickers don't do that.
Right.
In a classroom, and I've heard this from many members of the neurodivergent community who are now adults, who've said, sometimes quite emotionally, that they were the kid at a very early age who didn't get the sticker. They were that kid.
Yeah.
And they said it, not getting a sticker wasn't going to help solve the problem that caused me to not get the sticker in the first place. So my take on it is there's better ways than stickers to build a skill. And if a kid is having difficulty acquiring a skill, a sticker isn't going to move it along.
Right. Thinking of it more in a collaborative way when the kid says, this is something that I really want. And the parent says, well, you really want this. Could you earn it? Here's how you could earn it. You would have to do this or that in order to like teach the kid a habit, or to teach the kid, to teach the kid, like, you do this thing that is, you're not struggling with, but it's extra. To give an example with that same son, he has a lazy eye, and he's been through years of vision therapy and, all sorts of work. And I knew that if I could just get him started reading books like Harry Potter, he would love it. Like, I knew. But I also knew when I said to him, like, I tried the typical whatever. And when I advanced the concern, like, but don't you want to know how to read better? Like, wouldn't it be better if you're reading fluency better? Like, I don't care. Like, no. Who cares? Nowadays, like, whatever, I could voice to text. It doesn't matter. Which he's not wrong entirely. Don't you want to, like, enter the universe of all these books? There's such wonders in books that you're missing out on. No, I don't care. So I said to him, okay, I'm going to read you the first chapter. Just read you the first chapter. See if you like it. I read him the first chapter of Harry Potter. He loved it. Then I said to him, you know what? I'm going to buy a little bit of your time. I'm gonna give you a reward. You have been asking me for this thing. I will buy you this thing. You'll earn it through reading a few chapters. After 3 chapters, he was hooked. When he finished the entire series, he's like, are there other authors like that? And that was it. We got over the hump, which reading is difficult for someone with a lazy eye. It gives you a headache. Like, it's not enjoyable. And, his eye is much better. And also I had this other concern. The vision specialist said the more he reads, the more the therapies we're doing will actually take effect, and the stronger there's no substitution for reading when you have a lazy eye. So for me, it was like, I want to get you reading, and I know you're going to love it. Like, I know you, I know your personality. I know that if I could just get you into high interest books, get you over the hump of actually opening the book, you'll be thrilled. Right? Which is what ended up happening. So in a situation like that, that's what I mean, where you're using a reward. Like, you're being collaborative, not coercive.
Well, I wouldn't call that's collaborating over a reward.
Okay.
What we know about rewards is that their effects tend to dissipate once they are removed.
Yeah.
So in general, you're giving an example of an instance in which a reward did get the job done. It sounds like it was a durable intervention. I have more faith in solving problems durably by actually hearing the kid's concerns about what's hard, hearing your concerns about why you feel it's important that he read, and come up with a solution that works for both of you. My experience tells me that those kinds of solutions tend to be way more durable than rewards, whose effects, once again, tend to dissipate over time. I also, I'm not allergic to what you described, but I have worked with a lot of kids whose only solution was a reward.
Yeah. It can't be your only solution. It has to be. It's also his problem that he's coming to me with is, I really want this Lego set, right? Which, okay, and I'm not necessarily right now interested in spending a lot of money on a randomly shaped bits of plastic, right? So it's where it's like, what's an extra thing you could do to earn this Lego set? You have a concern, I have a concern. I wonder if we can play Let's Make a Deal. That is more collaborative than I need you to brush your teeth, you're going to get stickers, and if you don't get stickers, I'm going to take away the stickers, and then you're in trouble, and right? Like,
it is a softer reward. Here's what's interesting, especially in the kids who I work with who have big frustration responses. Punishment is often one of the things that sets off the frustration response. You're not talking about punishment.
Yeah.
But it is just as common for a kid who's not receiving an anticipated reward to set off a frustration response.
Yes.
We don't want frustration responses. So you're describing a scenario in which it seemed to get the job done. I just don't like relying on that, because those solutions tend not to work very well over time. Yours may have. My experience tells me often they don't.
Yeah, I think when they're used and it's not done with consent with the kid, and it's not done for solving, you're not trying to get the kid to do something and that's an antithesis to them. You're not trying to get them to do something noxious. You're collaborating on the specific thing that the child actually wants. That's different, because I think people confuse rewards. There are rewards that are quite coercive, and we don't like coercive control of kids because it doesn't teach you anything. And then there are rewards that are, that are more natural. They're natural consequences in the healthy way, right? Wow, guys, we're at the mall and everyone was behaving so nicely and nobody was hurting each other and nobody was getting out of control. I actually still have energy. Yeah, we actually could stop off at that place too. Sure, that's a reward. It's just not a sticker chart, right? It's more of a, sure, actually we do have the time. Everyone got out of the house on time. We got here on time. We got here early, so we have extra time. Great. If we have extra time, sure, we can go to it wasn't like if we don't get here on time and if we're mean to each other in the mall and if there's bickering and mommy's, getting too tired, then we have to leave. That's a punishment. It's actually, yes, sure, we can. Why not? We have an extra half hour.
You and I may never agree on this, which is okay. My biggest concern about incentivizing, no matter how it's done, performance is that we often never find out if the kid ends up performing in response to the incentive. We've just missed out on a ton of information.
Yeah.
We really don't yet know what's making it hard for the kid to meet the expectation. So the reward might have gotten it done this time, but sometimes what gets in the way on one thing is going to get in the way on another. I'd rather know and solve it than reward it away and still not know.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's no matter what
data. Yeah.
That's no matter what kind of reward it is.
Yeah, I think that, sure. And I think we also forget when things go well, when we let, like this example of okay, we went to the mall and everything went well. We forget to collect data in those situations. We collect data in the situations where things don't go well. Why was there so much fighting? What happened? We don't always say, today was so pleasant. This morning went so well. What worked? What was so great about this morning? And a lot of times then we get the information. Yeah, well, obviously, because he wasn't sitting next to me and poking me. So of course I didn't fight with him, right? Unless we have the postmortem about the good parts, we're never going to know. And we do need the data.
Well, and one of the things we say about the CPS model is that it's an ask the kid model. So I like taking a lot of the pressure off adults to figure it out on their own. Even if they're collecting data, I actually find that it's a lot more efficient just to go straight to the source. How come you were able to get out for school on time today, but yesterday was more difficult? I rely your number one source of information in the CPS model is the kid.
Yeah.
So if there's any pressure on adults in the model, it's to know how to find out instead of to know what's the matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the how to find out, I think, it really is hard, I think, sometimes for a post-traumatic parent because they want the solution quickly, right? The middle stage of not knowing is very anxiety provoking.
I would say that is true for pretty much every parent or caregiver I've ever worked with, trauma history or otherwise. We are quick to try to get to the solution for whatever reason, even though we really don't know what's going on yet. So yes, doing it proactively instead of emergently helps a great deal. And because this is new for people, they are a lot more anxious the first time they're doing it than the 10th time they're doing it. By the time they're doing it the 10th time, they've got some muscle memory for it. They've got a rhythm with their kid going. Much less anxiety inducing once people get a roll on.
And what do you say to a parent that, is very determined for their plan A because they're already thinking 30 steps ahead, right? But if the kid doesn't meet this expectation, then forget it. His life's over. I mean, he's going to fail 5th grade math, which means he's going to never get into college with me, right? Because their trauma is just taking them to, he's dead in a ditch.
Plan A, of course, just for those who are listening who've not heard that term, is where the adult is deciding what's getting in the kid's way. and the adult is deciding what the solution is and imposing it on the kid, often, as I always say, with some form of incentive. What I usually ask those parents, because if they're seeking out my assistance, it's not because things are going really well, it's because things are going really poorly. But even if they're not seeking out my help, if it's not going well, that's a good justification for doing things differently. If they think things are going well, I'm likely to point out to them that plan A, imposing solutions, doesn't help them know what's getting in their kid's way. They're just powering through it. I don't know if that's what's best for the kid over the long haul. I don't know if that's what's best for this relationship over the long haul.
So you're saying like there's like a tunnel vision of like this immediate problem as opposed to what's best for this child over the course of his whole development.
Yeah, and I find that problems that are solved unilaterally with plan A aren't typically durably solved anyways. So it's plan A on the same thing over and over again. That would not be my definition of working.
Right. Right. That makes a lot of sense. And so again, we're really asking the post-traumatic parent here to be like, well, this is your anxiety, this is your trauma, this is your fortune telling. We've got to do what's best for this kid now because number one, it's not working. Like you're saying, you're not in a therapist's office or you're not reading a parenting book if it was working. Number two, it may not be, we may temporarily not, like tonight, he may not do the math homework because we're spending so much time having that conversation. Maybe that's true. Like time's a thing, right? It's a box. It fills up. We get that. But in the long run, we may be able to teach him a skill that he's going to need for life. So one instance of missed fifth grade math homework may be an investment.
And some of the work that I do with some parents who are called post-traumatic parents is to have them give some thought to the effect, because they seem to be repeating the mistakes of the past. Let's think about the effect of how you were parented on you. Let's think about whether that's what you want to do with your kid. But also, let's organize the effort for you. Let's get you out of the heat of the moment by identifying those unsolved problems proactively, any expectation your kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. There's the mountain that lies before us. We're not going to be able to solve them all at once, which is why there's this big pile of unsolved problems that we've just identified. Let's pick 3. We'll start with those. Those are our high priority unsolved problems. The rest we're putting on hold for now because we can't solve everything at once. Let's get the ball rolling on these top 3, the 3 top priorities. Let's get some muscle memory going here. Let's get a rhythm going here. Let's get you comfortable with this way of doing things, because what you've told me is that the way you were parented didn't work for you. Let's not perpetuate the mistakes of the past. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. I think that then our brain sort of takes over and perpetuates the mistakes of the past, right? Like that's what tends to happen. And because you're saying, you have to build a muscle memory for a skill,
Correct.
because it is for a lot of people an unnatural way to talk to kids.
No doubt. Much easier if they're doing it proactively.
Yeah.
And much easier, there's all kinds of free resources on the Lives in the Balance website to serve as examples of what this can look like. So much easier if they have video examples. Sometimes people need a coach to help them through it, which they can also find on the Lives in the Balance website. But they are more likely to perpetuate the mistakes of the past if they find themselves in the heat of the moment than if they're finding themselves doing this proactively.
And what would you suggest to a parent who gets so dysregulated themselves in response to their kid's dysregulation, so it becomes a cycle? So every time they try to have a proactive conversation with the kid gets mad right away. Like the kid's like, I don't know, leave me alone. Like, I don't want to talk to you. And then they get mad. What's the best way for them to handle it?
We need to make sure that they are doing that first step of the problem-solving process correctly, because the vast majority of kids are very eager to finally be heard. Mm-hmm. Let's make sure they're doing it right. Let's make sure they're not, for example, trying to talk with the kid about their concerning behavior. That's going to set a kid off.
Right.
but instead about the problem that's causing the behavior. We're not even mentioning the concerning behavior when we're talking to kids about expectations. They're having difficulty meeting. So first we need to make sure that we're doing it the way it's supposed to be done, but make also sure that they're not doing it in the heat of the moment. That adds a lot of unpleasantness to the mix. Ultimately, it could be that we have to make the unsolved problem difficulty talking to mom or dad about problems.
Mm-hmm.
What's up? And what we often hear from kids, I don't like to tell people what they're going to hear from a kid because every kid is different, is when you try to talk to me, I think I'm in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, you talk to me sometimes, but then you lower the boom. I'm afraid that when you talk to me, I'm not going to get the reward I thought I had coming to me. From one kid, when you try to talk to me, you spit when you talk, and I can't stand it.
Yeah.
I never know what it's going to be, but sometimes we have to back off of the problem we started trying to talk with them about and talk with them about just talking about problems in the first place and see if we can get anything.
And then, so we're starting with like, we're defining the problem as we have a problem having a conversation about problems. Right. And
I've
like it
noticed that
talks
you've been
about
having
talks.
difficulty, right? I've noticed that you've been having difficulty talking with me about problems. What's up? And, that's not perfect, but generally speaking, you're going to get information that way. If you don't, you can go to your fingers. Is it because you think you're in trouble? If the kid holds up 5 fingers, you're onto something. Is it because you think I'm about to lower the boom?
Mm-hmm.
If the kid holds up 5 fingers, you're onto something, right? Is it because I spit when I talk? If the kid holds up 1 finger, I guess it's not that.
Right. And so then the kid is starting to see that like that was the conversation for now and it was fine.
Correct.
Like I was heard.
And
It's okay.
they were heard. It was resolved in a mutually satisfactory way. So it's not just that we were looking for their concerns and then did whatever we wanted.
Right.
It's collaborative across the whole process. Eventually, kids who've grown up on plan A come to trust plan B. Eventually, adults who've been traumatized by plan A come to trust plan B and greatly prefer it. Nothing's super fast in this business. There are no quick fixes, but generally speaking, this goes a whole lot faster than sticking with something that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think parents don't like to feel like they're failing, right? We all want to feel like we're doing the best we can with our kids, and we all want to feel like our kids feel heard and understood. I think when I ask parents, tell me, a grown up that that meant something to you, it's usually the person who listened, right? It's usually the person who made you feel seen in some way. Not always is that your parent, but it's usually someone who made you feel seen.
Right. And here's what's interesting as it relates to the traumatized parent. What I often say is, why are there so many adults who are literally petrified of listening to a kid's concerns? Because they are petrified that their own concerns are going to be dismissed or disregarded if somebody else's concerns are on the table.
Yeah.
Why are they petrified that their concerns are going to be dismissed or disregarded? Because that's their history. Once again, let's not perpetuate history. We can do this differently. Let's get out of the heat of the moment. Let's organize the effort. Let's focus on unsolved problems instead of the behaviors or frustration responses that are being caused by them. Don't stick with what isn't working for you if it isn't working for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You're saying like you learned that people's concerns are a zero-sum game somewhere. You learned that in an instance of trauma, that either one person's concerns are primary or someone else's. And sometimes that's true, right? But sometimes we can both get what we want, right? Sometimes we can collaborate. Sometimes there's a completely different solution. And you learned that through trauma, right? This is a trauma-based learning that if someone else's concerns are more important than yours, then that means that you never get your way. I think that it's true that there are a lot of parents who hear collaborative problem solving and think it means that their concerns will never be heard, only their kids' concerns will ever be heard, and that's not accurate.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, and you are right that I feel like that is based on like my experience working with so many traumatized parents, very often it is correct that this is how they were socialized, stepdad gets mad. He's the biggest bully in the room. We all need to keep him happy. Right? Or whatever the thing is. I'm the glass child. There's a sick person in the house. Or, I'm the, mom's histrionic and her emotions are the only thing we have oxygen for. So that's where you learned that.
You picked it up somewhere.
Yeah.
I would say we have lots of examples in our world of unilateral solutions causing conflict. We don't want to perpetuate that either. I've got this model in my blood, so I like to believe that there's just about any problem that can be solved collaboratively. But we've got lots of Plan A in our world as examples of how Plan A, generally speaking, doesn't work out so well, causes conflict. So even if someone's not a post-traumatic parent, we got lots of other examples of unilateral solutions that don't work out so well.
Yeah, that's very true. I really like that. You've given me a lot of food for thought. So before we let you go, because we're taking up so much of your time, is there anything you, as a last thought, you want to share with the post-traumatic parenting community?
The key theme of the CPS model is kids do well if they can. Mm-hmm. It's the belief that if kids could do well, they would do well. If they're not doing well, something's getting in the way. What's getting in the way is an expectation the kid is having difficulty meeting, an unsolved problem. What we've been thinking for a very long time is kids do well if they wanna.
Yeah.
Which is the belief that this kid doesn't want to do well. I don't think that's accurate. We're much better off believing that this kid would very much prefer to be doing well. Let's collaborate with them to try to figure out what's getting in the way on the expectations they're having difficulty meeting, and let's solve that problem together.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for so many post-traumatic parents, it really can restore parenting confidence. And just this idea, like, skill not will, let's figure this out, let's give the skill they don't have, like, let's work together with our kids, I think is so helpful. Is there, so we can find you, I know, at Lives in the Balance. Where else can people find you right now? When is the new book coming out?
New book is out on February 24th. People can find it on Amazon. And we want to remind people that the name of the model is Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, not Collaborative Problem Solving. That was what I called it originally, but don't call it that anymore. It's Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, and the proactive part is critical.
Yeah. Yes, that's really a helpful reframe, I think, for people that the proactive part is so important. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate having you here. Your work has been so influential to an entire generation of child psychologists. So I want to thank you for myself for getting to read your books while I was in grad school and just for all the work that you do. Really appreciate having you here.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm here on social media to be descriptive, not prescriptive. I'm here to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain, but never to treat. If listening to this podcast helps you realize that you need therapy, I am all for that. But podcasts aren't therapy. Please reach out to a mental health professional licensed in your jurisdiction. You'll be glad you did. Wish post-traumatic parenting was a talk show, not a podcast? You have a question for me or for my guests? Great news. You can ask those questions by following me on Instagram. My handle is @DrKoslowitz Psychology. It's also in the show notes. I love it when people reach out, DM, or post a question. Who knows, your question might spark an entire episode. Come join our community. We get it. We're post-traumatic parents too. Can't wait to hear from you.